This conference will now be recorded.
Are you hearing my voice properly?
Hello?
Hello, Kapil, are you hearing voice properly?
Yes, sir. Voice is properly. Sir, videos is not uploaded, sir.
Yeah, already I informed them. Maybe tomorrow they will update. Okay.
Okay, sir. No problem. Thank you, sir.
So today we are going to discuss AWS Identity and Access Management IAM. So this is like in Windows delegation control. In Linux we can call as a sudo users, assigning the administrator privileges to the normal users. So as a AWS account holder, root login holder, you can able to give the permissions to others to access the AWS services. Like you can see, so you can go to AWS Management Console. You can check how you are logged into the AWS Management Console. So every day we are logging as a root account. So go to log back in. So every day we are going to log in AWS Management Console as a root user account. So root is nothing but a administrator account. See, every day we are logging like this. So here you are giving the username and password, we are logging. But now we're going to create IAM user, identity access and management. So Windows server, we have the permissions we can give to the normal users, that is the delegation control. In Linux, there is a concept is called sudo space username. You can give the command sudo users. Like that in AWS, you can assign the system administrator privileges to the normal users. That is nothing but a IAM. That is the concept we are going to do. So AWS Identity and Access Management. So here we are going to discuss introduction to AWS Identity and Access Management. What are the IAM features? So what is multi-factor authentication? What is virtual MFAs, multi-factor authentications, users security credentials, temporary security credentials, managing the permissions and policies, managing users and user cases, how to create the IAM groups, how to accessing the IAM. So these are the concepts today we are going to discuss. So you can see AWS Identity and Access Management enables us to securely control access to AWS services and resources for the users. So using IAM, we can create and manage AWS users and groups and use the permissions to allow and deny their access to AWS resources. So already we discussed, by default we are going to log in as a root user. As a root user, you can create normal users in AWS Management Console. So you can give the permissions on some particular resources, some particular services. Allow or deny permissions you can give. Next, AWS Identity Access Management is a web service that enables Amazon Web Services customers to manage users and user permissions in AWS. The service is targeted at organizations with multiple users or systems in the cloud that use AWS products such as Amazon EC2, Amazon RDS Relation Database Services, and Management Console. With IAM, we can centrally manage users' security credentials such as access keys and permissions that control AWS resources for the users. So it is a free to use, so no charges they are going to be assigned to you. AWS Identity and Access Management is a feature of our AWS account offered to no additional charge. We will charge it only for use of other AWS products by our IAM users. So by default, this account is free, but by using this account, so if you are going to access some AWS products which are having some chargeable products, so they are going to be charged. For using this account, they are not going to charge. So next, so what are the features of IAM? Shared access to our AWS account. For example, I have my AWS account. So I can create one user account by using your name. I can give some permissions. You can only use EC2. You can only use S3 storage. You can only use EBS, Elastic Block Storage. But other services you cannot access. So we can grant other people permissions to administer and use resources in our AWS account without sharing our password or access key. So whatever the my root password, I am not going to share you, but I am going to create an account for you. I am going to assign one password to you. By using that account name and password, you can log into our AWS management console. So you can access whatever the permissions I given on the particular services or resources. So granular permissions, we can grant different permissions to different people for different resources. For example, user A can give EC2 instance permission, user B S3 storage, user C some other RDS, like that. Different people, different permissions on different resources I can assign. So those are called granular permissions. For example, we might allow some users for complete access to Amazon Elastic Cloud. Just now I told you Amazon S3, Amazon RDS, and other AWS products. For other users, we might allow read-only access. So you can just go to the S3 buckets. You can see so which objects are copied into S3 buckets, but you cannot do anything. You cannot administer. Just you can only access your read-only permissions. But you can administer EC2 instances like that. Different permissions I can give different users in IAM. So I can also give billing information. So your work is every month, every day you have to monitor the billing information. So how much resources you utilized, how much bill is raised. So you can check, you can update the information. So next to secure access to AWS resources for applications that run on Amazon EC2. So we can use IAM features to securely access applications that run on EC2 instances. Next to multi-fact multi-factor authentication, so simply called as MFA. We can add two-factor authentications to our account and to individual users for extra security. So for example, so you given the username and password. So once you given the username and password, again it will ask you the so other two authentication factors. So once we configured multi-factor authentication, even if you give your username and password properly also, other security credentials it will ask you. So that is we are going to configure. So we can add two-factor authentication to our account and to individual users for extra security. With MFA, our users must provide not only a password or access key to work with the account, but also a code from a special configured device that will be given by vendor. So this is chargeable. For example, you can see in companies, So when you are going to do the work from home, so they will give one device to you. Once you give an username and password, so authentication key will come. So if you give the wrong password, wrong username, again when you try to give again, so like OTP. So we are getting OTPs when you are transferring the money or when you are doing online transactions. It will ask you the OTP. Like that same, they will give one device to you. So automatically it will send the authentication IDs to you. So even if you give username password also, you can give the authentication IDs. That is nothing but a MFA. Next to identity federation, we can allow users who already have passwords elsewhere. For example, in our corporate network or with an internet identity provider to get temporary access to our AWS account. So in our company, you have already one password is there. That is also you can authenticate to get the temporary access to your AWS account. Next to identity information for assurance. If you use AWS Cloud Trail, we receive log records that include information about those who made requests for resources in your account. That information is based on IAM identities. For example, cloud trail is a concept is there. So every log it will record. So that is also you can manage who is going to request your logs. So you can identify by using your IAM account. So enhanced security. So best practices by allowing us to grant unique security credentials to users and groups to specify with AWS service application interfaces and resources we can access. And also temporary credentials. In addition to define access permissions directly to users and groups, IAM lets us to create roles. So roles allow us to define a set of permissions and authentication for users or EC2 instances. For example, you can create one role, so you can assign some policies or permissions to assign that role. That role you can add to the user. So for example, I am going to give manage EC2 instances, manage S3 storage. So that is the role I created. That role I can allocate to you. So then you can get the permissions to access EC2 instances and S3 storage. So flexible security credential management. So we can assign a range of security credentials, including passwords, key pairs already you know, and X590 certificates, authentication certificates. We can also enforce multi-factor, just now we discussed, on users who access the AWS management console or use application interfaces. Leverage external identity systems. We can use IAM to grant our employees and applications access to the AWS management console and to AWS service APIs. AWS supports federation from corporate systems like Microsoft Active Directory as well as external web identity providers like Google and Facebook. So by using IAM, you can also, so I can grant my employees to access the applications like Microsoft Active Directory, and you can also manage the Google accounts and Facebook accounts also. So I can give the permissions to you to access these Google and Facebook. So seamlessly integrated into AWS services. IAM is integrated into most AWS services through AWS Management Console that will take effect to throughput our AWS environment. So you can integrate many services with IAM like EC2 instances, S3 storage, Elastic Block Storage, like whatever the resources are available, you can integrate into IAM. So what is multi-factor authentication? Already we discussed, again they given. So AWS multi-factor authentication is a simple best practice that adds an extra layer of protection on top of your username and password. So even you can see while we are transferring the money from our account, so I can give the my username, ICICI Bank, my password. Even again I am transferring the money, it will send the OTP. So please provide OTP to transfer the money. So top of your username and password, again the extra security layer is there. That is nothing but a multi-factor authentication. With MFA enabled, when a user sign on to an AWS website, they will be prompted for their username and password. First they will give, as well as for an authentication code from their AWS MFA device, which is provided by your vendor. So taken together, these simple factors, these multiple factors provide increased security for our AWS settings and resources. So even if you give your username and password, if you have, so it will send two-factor authentication. So then you have to give that two authentication codes. You can log into your account. So we can enable MFA for our AWS account, and for individual IAM users, we have created on our account. So you can own your account. You can also mention your MFA. You can enable it, or else you can give the IAM users for MFA authentication. After we have obtained a supported hardware or virtual MFA device, AWS does not charge any additional fees for using MFA. So if you have the supported hardware, if you have your own virtual MFA device, they are not going to be charged. So virtual MFA applications. MFA applications for our smartphones can be installed from the application store that is specific to our phone type. The following table lists some applications for different smartphones. So if you have an Android mobile, you can download AWS virtual software Google Authenticator. So if you have an iPhone, Google Authenticator. If you have a Windows phone, Authenticator. So these are the apps. If you have a BlackBerry, Google Authenticator. So depending upon your mobile, so you can download this Google Authenticator MFA software from your mobile. You can access your AWS IAM account. You can log in whatever the permissions they given on the particular service. You can work through your mobile. So remember, Android Google Authenticator app you have to download. iPhone Google Authenticate. Windows Phone Authenticator. BlackBerry Google Authenticator. Except Windows Phone, remaining all the mobile apps you can use Google Authenticator only. So manage user security credentials. AWS Identity and Access Management manage several types of long-term security credentials like passwords, access keys, and key pairs. So we can assign security credential to our IAM users using application interface, command line interface, or management console. So we can rotate or revoke these credentials whenever we want. So you can rotate the keys. Next, in addition to managing these user credentials, we can further enhance the security of IAM user access to AWS by enforcing the use of multi-factor authentication. So next, temporary security credentials also you can assign. So let's us grant any user temporary credential securities. So for example, so you came to some site for working 15 days. So I can give the temporary credential to for 15 days only. So with a defined expression for access to our resources, I can give you 15 days authentication only. That 15 days only you can use. So you can create a mobile app with a third party sign or with a customized authentication. So organizer authentications. So like depending upon which security authentications we are going to use, they will provide to you some temporary resources. So managing permissions and policies. Permissions let us specify who has access to AWS resources and which actions they can perform on those resources. Every AWS IAM use starts with no permissions. This is remember, intro point of view. By default, when you create a IAM user, by default are no permissions. So as a root administrator, you have to assign the permissions. In other words, by default, users can do nothing, not even view their own access keys also. You cannot view your access keys also. But once they given permissions, then you can see. To give a user permission to do something, we can add the permission to the user. That is, attach a policy to the user or add the user to a particular group. Already we given some desired permissions. So I can create a user account, but you can't do anything by default. So once I can attach whatever the policy I created, then you can do something. Or whatever the group I created with a desired permissions, if I add into that group, then you can have the permissions. So to assign permissions to a user, group or role or resource, we can create a policy. So actions first, which AWS actions we can allow. For example, allow the users Amazon S3 list bucket. This is action. Resource, Amazon S3 buckets. This is the resource. What you are going to perform list bucket action. Effect, whether to allow or deny. So to allow list the bucket or to deny the list the bucket. That is effective permission. Conditions. Which conditions must be present for the policy to take effect? For example, we might allow access only to the specific S3 buckets if the user is connecting from the specific IP range. So 192.168.10.192.168.0.10 to 192.168.0.20. This is the IP range. Who can access from this IP range can only access S3 buckets. So that condition also you can perform. Policies are creating by using JSON by developers. This is Java related some program. A policy consists of one or more statements, each of which describes one set of permissions. So a policy can have a set of permissions, not only single permission, a set of permissions you can attach to a policy. If you use the AWS management console to manage permissions, we can select a predefined policy. Any policy can be customized. By default, some policies are available. If you want to customize the policies, you can also customize the policies. Next, how to manage the users in IAM. So manage IAM users and their access. You can create the users in IAM, assigning them individual security credentials. Already we discussed access keys, passwords, MFA devices, temporary credentials to provide. We can manage permissions in order to control which operations a user can perform. IAM user can be privileged administrators who need console access to manage, end users who need access to the content in AWS, systems and softwares that need privileges to programmatically access to your data in AWS. So you can do any one of the performance depending upon the administrator who given the specific function to work on that. These are already discussed. So this is the like you can create the user accounts like Brad, Jim, DevOps1, DevOps2, TestApp1, TestApp2. Then first create user account, give the user security credentials. So put user into one or more groups. You can add the user into multiple groups. Give the user login profile. So I can give the user login name and password. So like this. This is the account. So we have different groups: admin group, developers group, testing group. So admin groups I added Bob and Susan. So they can do the administrator privileges on the AWS. So developers group, they can do the development actions. Testing department to users, they can give the testing actions. So you can create the user accounts, you can add into different groups depending upon their work. Now we are going to see practically. So log into your AWS management console. Now give the password. Log into the server. So this is the AWS management console. Go to services. Go to security and identity. listening and security and compliance, click on IAM. Click on IAM Management Console. First, create one group account. The network is very slow. I am changing. Now you can log into IAM. Click on groups. So create new group. So group name you can give any name. I am giving the name EC2 admin. Click on next. So policy type. You can search the policy EC2F or else you can drag and you can select Amazon EC2 full access. So policy I am creating. Create group. See, group name is EC2 admin group. Policy is Amazon policy EC2 full access. Create group. So create another group. S3 admin. S3 storage admin group name. Next. Policy name S3F full access. Amazon S3 full access. For example, select the policy. Next step, click on create group. So two groups we created, two policies we assigned, EC2 admin, S3 admin. Now create the user accounts now. Click on users, add user. So username, for example, Kapil. So access type, AWS management console access. Auto generated password or custom password. I am giving custom password. I am going to manage the password. So Kapil @123. I am giving the password. So I am checking the password. Kapil @123. Okay, required password reset. User must create a new password. I am unchecking this one. Next, click on next permissions. So, which permission you want to give? I am going to give EC2 permissions to this Kapil user. Click on add tags. Name EC2-Kapil. Okay, next to review. Create user. Now create another user. Now download this file, otherwise you cannot log in. Download.csv file. So this is downloaded. So click on close. Now another user, add user, creating Krishna user account. AWS management console, I am giving the access, custom password, Krishna@123. So password, Krishna@123. Okay. User cannot change password. Next permissions. Select S3 admin. So I am giving this policy for you. Add tags. Name S3 Krishna. Next review. Click on create user. Download the file .csv. Now I want to create a user account. Now I want to give the both accesses. So I given EC2 for Kapil, S3 for Krishna. Now I am going to create one user account. I am giving the permissions to both. So again, click on close. Add user. Username Shiva. AWS management console. Next permissions. So both EC2 and S3. Add tags. Name EC2-S3 Shiva. Click on review. Create user. Click on close. Now select the user Shiva. Security credentials you can check. So if you want to give any permissions, you can give the permissions. If you want to give the access key, you can give the access key. So these two are the permissions we given. So if you want to set the permissions boundary, you can set the permissions boundary. So you can also deny the permissions. Now we are not going to do this one. Cancel. Now what we are going to do, we are going to log in as a IAM user. So first here you can check your account number. This is how to copy your account number. Now I am logging out from this account. Go to services. Here, log out from this account. Log back in. So select IAM user. So it will ask you the account number, give the account number, next. So I am login as a IAM user. So username Kapil, password Kapil@123. Click on sign in. See, now Kapil is logged in. Now you can see Kapil this is the account number. So I given the permission only on EC2. Go to services. You can click on EC2. So you can go for launch the instance, because I can give the full, I given the full permissions to you. So you can go to instances. You can have permission, launch instance. So whatever you can do on the EC2 instances, you can do everything because I given the permission. Select. So you can launch the instance. So this permission you have, but you are trying to do storage. Go to S3 storage. Now try to create the bucket. You don't have permission, but you are trying. So what is the error? Access is denied. So I am not given the permission to access the service. I given the permission only on EC2 instances. Now log out from your account. Log in as a Krishna user. Krishna user, I given the permissions to S3 storage. Log back in. Now you can log in as a Krishna user. Username Krishna. Give the password. Krishna@123. Now you are logging as a Krishna user. So Krishna user, I given the permission only on S3 storage. Now click on services. Go to S3 storage. Now see, you can create bucket. So you can create the buckets. We are going to discuss about these topics next class. So, but you are able to access. Previously, when the Kapil user tried to create bucket, so already when you click on S3, it given the message access is denied. But this Krishna user now trying to use EC2 instances, but I am not given permission. So you are not authorized to describe running instances. You are not authorized to dedicate. You are not authorized. You are not authorized. See, you don't have any permission. Click on launch instances. Click on select. So an error occurred describing you selected AM. You are not authorized to perform this operation. So Krishna user, I given the S3 storage permissions. He can do S3 storage related configurations. Kapil user can do EC2 instances configurations. He cannot do S3 storage. Like that, whatever the permissions you given, so those permissions only they can access. This is the concept of IAM. So as a root administrator, I created two users, Kapil and Krishna. Kapil user I given EC2 permission. Krishna I given S3 storage. Except that whatever the permissions I given, you cannot access any other permissions, any other resources in the Amazon Web Management Console. Now I am going to log out from here. Now I am going to log in as my account, root administrator account. So here you can see sign in using root user email. Click on this. Now root user is selected. So I am giving the username. Next, I am giving the password. Click on sign in. Now go to IAM. Now I am removing the users. So click on groups. Select the group. Click on group actions. Delete group. Yes, delete. Select the S3. Delete group. Yes, delete. No groups deleted. Go to users. So select the Kapil user. Delete user. Yes, delete. Select the Krishna user. Delete user. Yes, delete. Select the Shiva user. Delete user. Yes, delete. So like this, you can delete the user accounts. This is IAM. It is nothing but assigning the administrator privileges to normal users. So tomorrow we are going to see multi-factor authentication and whatever the interview real-time interview point of view questions, exam tips. Tomorrow we are going to discuss about this IAM. Then we can start tomorrow Amazon S3 storage. Okay. So tomorrow I will again inform them. Today morning I inform them, but they are telling we are sending the links, but maybe not yet received. Tomorrow again I have to make it remember to send the videos. Okay, Mr. Kapil?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Hello,
Yeah, yeah, tell me.
sir. Please send sir Linux interview question also so that I can prepare for my interview. If you don't mind,
Okay,
sir.
okay,
Because
okay.
Linux interview.
I will send.
Thank you, sir.
Your mail ID is with me. I will send tomorrow. Okay.
Okay, sir. No problem. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Bye.